Defense Agency. He's going to speak for a short period of time, then we'll take some questions afterwards. If you could please wait until the end of his remarks before asking questions, and if you could identify yourself, provide your affiliation.
Okay, follow on from last year. This year, MDA is requesting $8.127 billion in 16 to improve and expand the development of defenses for the nation, deployed forces, allies, and international partners, with an ever-increasing ballistic missile threat capability. Our missile defense program does support the warfighter and combatant commanders and is in line with the priorities set last year. It preserves homeland and regional defense priorities driven by the President and the Department of Defense strategic guidance. First and foremost, it will maintain our commitment to operate and sustain and expand homeland defenses. We're requesting $1.763 billion for the ground-based mid-course defense program to continue the development and sustainment of the GMD weapon system, including the planned deployment of 40 GBIs at Fort Greely and 4 GBIs at Vandenberg for a total of 44 by the end of 17. The budget continues to fund flight testing, supporting the IMTP requirements, and enhances the stockpile reliability program and component agent testing in order to understand and maintain the health of the deployed asset. We're also requesting, follow-on requests from last year, is $279 million to continue development of the GMD redesigned kill vehicle for improved reliability, availability, performance, and producibility. In addition, the budget requests funding to conduct design and reliability characterization of the current GBI fleet. One of our highest priorities is to continue to demonstrate homeland defense capability through GMD flight testing. The planned testing of GMD in 16 includes a non-intercept test flight to evaluate alternate divert thrusters and to support algorithm development for discrimination improvements for homeland defense, as well as an intercept test followed roughly a year later of an ICBM target. Deployment of regional defenses to protect our deployed forces, allies, and coalition partners remains our top priority. The FY 2016 budget continues the development of and deployment of defenses against short, medium, and intermediate range ballistic missiles in the geographic combatant commanders, AORs. EPAA is designed to protect U.S. deployed forces and allies in Europe from BMD attacks from the Middle East. EPAA Phase 1 is now deployed and provides coverage of NATO territory in Europe. Phase 2 and 3 will be implemented in 2015 and 2018, respectively. The SM-31B directly supports EPA Phase 2 and will also be deployed globally by the Navy as needed for regional threats. We anticipate a full-rate production decision of the SM-3 Block 1B in the second quarter of 2015. Deliver SM-31Bs to the Navy for deployment on land at Aegis Ashore in Romania and at sea on the multi-mission Aegis ships with BMD capability. In addition, we're requesting $559 million for procurement of Aegis BMD, including the procurement of 40 SM-31Bs for a total of 209 1Bs procured by the end of 2016. Request also supports the installation of BMD 4.X ship sets and one BMD baseline 9.C1 Aegis ballistic missile defense ship set. In addition, MDA is also requesting $148 million for future buys 2017 through 2019, utilizing MYP authority to significantly reduce out-year production costs through EOQ buys. These MYP buys will result in estimated 14% long-term cost savings. MDA is co-developing the SM-32A missile with the government of Japan and upgrading the Aegis BMD weapon system to increase the area that can be defended and the probability of defeating a larger set of threats. The 2A development is ongoing and it's going very well. Continue to build upon the established joint research investments by both the United States and Japan. And in 2016, we request $173 million for the 2A Cooperative Development Program. The United States remains on track to complete land use agreements with the government of Poland for EPA Phase 3. Aegis Ashore construction for EPA Phase 3 is scheduled to begin in 2016. We're requesting $169 million of MILCON for construction of the Aegis Ashore site in Poland. We're also requesting $464 million for THAAD in procurement funding, which includes the purchase of 30 THAAD interceptors and training devices for the THAAD institutional training base at Fort Sill. Procurement supports the fielding of THAAD batteries based on warfighter demand and operational need. By the end of 2016, MDA will deliver 48 additional THAAD interceptors to the Army for a total of 155 interceptors delivered. Continue the support for the TPY-2 radar as part of our forward deployed THAAD battery in Guam. Services and combatant commanders with logistical support from MDA are operating the TPY-2 radars in 5 different locations. These radars continue to the regional defense and also provide significant contribution to the U.S. homeland. We're also requesting $500 million to develop, deploy, and sustain the TPY-2 radars and the UEWRs and the Cobra Dane radar in addition. MDA is requesting $450 million to integrate additional space sensors into the BMDS and enhance C2BMC track and discrimination, important to all the geographic combatant commanders. Another highlight, requesting $73 million for the continued operation of SBX. In addition, $138 million to continue the development of a long-range discrimination radar. I'll take your questions on that when we get to it. And finally, there's various requests through the advanced technology lines for discrimination, discrimination censoring, weapons technology, technology maturation and initiatives, and the common kill vehicle technology effort as well. We're implementing phase 2 of our kill vehicle strategy, working jointly with industry to revolutionize some of the concepts for the missile defense interceptor architecture, specifically MOKV. Budget continues to support MDA's long-standing support of the Israeli-U.S. cooperative BMD programs to include David Sling, upper tier interceptor, and aero weapon system improvements. We're working closely with IMDO on these programs. In addition to the joint development funding in the budget, 2016 budget includes $55 million of procurement funding for additional Iron Dome radars and associated equipment. Those are the highlights. I didn't go through everything, but I wanted to more importantly get to your questions and answer them about missile defense. Yep.
I just wanted to ask about the EKB redesign effort. When are you going to announce your strategy? And we've heard that you're looking at a national team, and asking all, instead of just having a competition and bringing it down.
We're very close to approval of the strategy. Just to give you some insight, it will. We're seeking approval for a government design authority approach, where we would manage the participation of 3 contractors: Lockheed Martin, Raytheon, and Boeing, in the development of the design for the new EKB. We would make the decisions on the design. We would decide on trade studies that will be conducted in terms of best components, best subcomponents, and in some cases ask for contributions from the labs, the UARCs, and the FFRDCs, in addition with some of their technology ideas. In the end, it will be our design, will be the final design authority. Our intention is still to compete production of that design in 2018 for the follow-on. It'll be part of the follow-on DSC contract competition. So government design of the new EKB followed by competition production, competitive production.
And the advantage to doing taking control?
Sure. As you know, we did 3 concept development proposals from the 3 companies, and we've evaluated all 3 over the past year. They all have positive and negative attributes, and it's our desire to get the best of all 3, and that's what we intend to do. Yes, sir.
Sir, it says that in addition, you're requesting funding to conduct design and reliability characterization of the current GBI fleet. Do you know how much money you'll be spending on that, and can you describe how you actually do that process of characterizing them?
Sure. I'll have to get you the exact numbers for that specific level of effort, so I'll take the number for the record if I can. Very important for us to go back with the GBIs that have been fielded to date and do the system engineering and analysis of the current design to better predict and help us understand in more detail the reliability number that we're using to inform our shot doctrine. It's a very important effort for us and the warfighter. Some of the efforts that we'll conduct are subcomponent, component level reliability testing of the currently fielded components to better inform our models and our effort in that area. Sure. Yeah.
In the overview provided to us, there's mention of a THAAD follow-on program. So I'm wondering how committed the agency is in 16, and what's involved in this particular budget year, and then what's the status for deciding what to do next?
Sure. I think the effort you're referring to is THAAD-ER, and some of the ideas that are out there. We have spoken to Lockheed Martin, who's proposed the idea and have done some very low-level conceptual analysis of the concept. Without going into the threat, we are always concerned about the growing threat and its capability. THAAD-ER is one solution. I think it's fair to say that we'll look at others in conjunction with THAAD-ER, and I think by next year you'll see a more definitive answer on our path ahead with either that program or a evolution of other interceptor programs.
Would you call what you're doing right now an analysis of alternatives, or?
I wouldn't. I would say early concept development, early evaluation of an industry concept. Yeah, Tony.
Progress toward expanding the field from 30 to 44 that
Yeah.
Secretary Hagel announced a year ago. What's the progress?
Going very, very well. And in integration and finishing the interceptors that are under contract, on track with a little margin, and working our way through the corrections, for example, the IMU, and getting those back into the flow for production. But I would say today we're on track.
Have you actually started installing the additional 14, any of the additional 14 in silos?
There's been a pull one out and put one in to date, and then there, as you know, there's a shell game that goes on to 44.
Okay, but by September of 30th of 2017, all 44 will be in there, or roughly?
All 44 will be in the ground by the end of fiscal year 17.
Okay. I need to ask you a quality question.
Sure.
5 years ago, the late Dave Altwig, your executive director of the agency, caused a lot of concern when he pretty much land-based the quality of primes and subcontractors. Rick Leonard was here, he remembers. 5 years later, what's the state of quality generally, and where do you still have pockets of concern?
Overall, at the prime level, there's been, and we'll get you the details if it's required. Overall, at the prime level, meaning at the Boeing Raytheon level, we've seen significant improvement on quality control on the factory floor and everything that they're doing to improve not just quality of what they do, but at the integration level as well. If there's one pocket of concern, it would be at the third and fourth and fifth tier suppliers, and we're aggressively attacking that with them to get at any outliers there as well.
Have there been any outliers that have caused major delays in SM3 or THAAD or the GBI production?
Recently, not since I've been here.
And what do you attribute this significant improvement to?
Two things. One, the company's taking a turn on quality, and there were concerns with SM3 quality, as you know, several years ago. And then I think the strength of our organization, our quality organization at MDA as well, working hand in glove with the contractors. Not entirely there yet. I'm not entirely satisfied, but there's been progress, and I think you'll see me rest when we're confident at the fourth and fifth tier level. Yeah.
Admiral, of course, the CPOC magazine. You talked about testing for the GMD program. Tests for Aegis, you've got to test out the 2B and some of the other programs. What's the test program for Aegis ashore or Aegis afloat?
Sure. I think, as you know, last year the 2B was canceled, so there's no testing plans for the 2B. The 2A will be an active program this year with 2 controlled test vehicle flights for the 2A. Current schedule is May and November. Very, very confident that we're on track to the May date with some margin. So those are 2 big tests for us. The 1B, as you know, went through extensive testing last calendar year, very successful. They'll be part of the operational test this summer, where we'll actually do a 1B intercept test from the facility at PMRF. There's several other lower level tests planned for Aegis this year as well, so we're continuing. Yeah, Amy.
If the other services have been able to articulate what would have to come out of their budget if BCA holds,
Sure.
Do you have the sort of first kill list?
We're working that list with the department real time.
Okay.
And it would be premature for me to talk about that, but there are discussions going on in that area.
Okay. And can you go into a little bit more detail about what was described in the materials as an advanced sensor being added onto MTAS-B and a UAV-borne laser?
I can't talk about the first, other than that it's an advanced sensor being added to the MTSB. Right, correct. And the second question was?
The airborne UAV laser.
Yeah, as we mature the technology, we are driving towards a more robust flight test on UAVs over the next 2 to 3 years.
And that's in the interest of a boost phase intercept goal?
Primarily at the power levels we're talking today for discrimination and tracking in the near term. What's that?
Is that a new start?
It was a technology effort from last year. I think, you know, what you guys may see in some of the budget rollout is that there were some PEs that moved around by Congress that are now accounting for things slightly differently, but that'll show up in our budget books.
So is there a specific demonstration or anything associated with both the classified sensor on MTAS-B and the UAV-borne sensor?
Yes.
The laser? Be specific?
I can't. I can't. And it's just due to classification level. I just like to leave it at that for today. Thanks.
Can you say more about the long-range discriminating radar and what the planning is for that?
Sure. We released the RFP on January 8th. It is S-band. We're asking for a two-phase capability. The location has not yet been decided by the combatant commanders. Suffice it to say it will be Alaska. I expect proposals back in March, and I expect to award before the end of the fiscal year. And we're very encouraged by the RFI responses we got, and I think it'll be a healthy competition.
Some of the, I mean, it's a very relatively small amount of money for that program in this budget now, but what's the overall cost going to be of that radar program? It's over $1 billion, right?
It's just about $1 billion if you include radar development, production, and MILCON.
There were some competitions in other parts of the military over this past year that had, you know, that track similarly with the radar that you're looking at.
Yeah.
So is it a false assumption to suggest that the, you know, Navy's radar decision will affect yours, or the Air Force decision, you know, which has now been contested, will affect yours?
I think it's safe to say that we feel the technology maturity and the different offers from the various companies sets us up for a very competitive landscape for this procurement.
So there's no, you know, presumed winner?
Absolutely no presumed winner. I can assure you of that. Thanks. Yeah, over here.
I just want to go back to that extended range.
Yeah.
I believe Lockheed completed their concept study, and you guys received it. Is that analysis still ongoing?
It is.
And you said that there are other concepts you might consider to sort of address this threat. I know you can't talk about the threat, but can you talk about what other concepts you might be considering?
One would be SN6. And let me just leave it at that. But again, nothing's been proposed in that area, but it would be safe to say that before any program would start, that we would work closely with the CAPE on what the other alternatives would be to meet the threat. Okay. Jeff.
Hi. You moved the second radar to Japan. If I remember correctly, that was a radar from Vandenberg. Is there any plan to put a radar in Vandenberg? Because that was a training radar, if I remember correctly.
It was. There's no plan to permanently station a radar at Vandenberg.
So how would it, how's that training done?
Yeah, the agreement that we have with the Army is that they obviously have radars that are available with the THAAD batteries that we're fielding. And as we need a radar for testing or upgrade or whatever development we need to do, we have an agreement with them that we could use one of their radars that we've turned over. And that'll be on a case-by-case basis, Jeff.
Thank you.
Yeah, Amy.
There was a note in the budget material saying that there were dollars set aside for additional space sensor integration.
Mm-hmm.
Can you go into detail about that? And also, is there a plan ahead for an STSS or PTSS or whatever it's called now, follow-on?
There is no plan right today for SDSS or PTSS follow-on. We're certainly working through, concepts in terms of what might be possible, but there's no concrete plan yet. And I think you'll see us work closely with the Air Force on those opportunities. And then on integration of other sensors, I'd just like to leave it at, we're watching as capability is fielded, and we want to be able to integrate that capability.
So can you articulate for us to what extent SBIRS is integrated into the system at this point? Because it's been fielded for some time.
I'd rather not in this forum, okay?
Okay, and then the PTS follow-on issue. You've been saying repeatedly that you'll be working with the Air Force on this. Is it safe to assume that this would become an Air Force program and MDA would serve in an advisory role, or should we expect for there to be an MDA-led program at some point?
I think, one, there's no decision been made on it, but it's safe to say that any mission in space for missile defense cannot be just unique, alone MDA, in my view. That we've got to partner with the Air Force and other partners to, in conjunction with what they feel, have the opportunity for missile defense functionality as well. I think that's prudent for us in terms of the limited budget and the opportunity we have with them. But I don't think, you're not going to see an MDA-only sponsored program.
I apologize for harping on the space thing
Yeah.
here, but it is, because there is no follow-on, there was such rhetoric for a point of time saying this must have a follow-on. Is it safe to assume that some risk is being accepted? Is there a potential gap here?
Sure, and I talked about this last year in terms of, the answer is not just in radars, that there needs to be a more persistent space-based tracking and discrimination capability as the threat progresses. And I think you'll see us work closely with the partners I mentioned, plus the CAPE, on what those opportunities are. The requirement has not gone away, in my opinion.
On the DSC, when is the
Yeah.
follow-on DSC contract going to come up for renewal?
We'll run the competition in 2018.
Israel signed an MOU with the MDA last year to co-produce, to the extent possible, Iron Dome components in the United States. 1 year later, what's the progress on that?
In very close coordination with them, coming very close. Obviously, it's contract negotiations that are going on, coming very close to the percentages that we've signed up to, and they have signed up to. Very satisfied with how that's going.
Well, have they actually signed any contracts with U.S. companies yet?
I'm talking the negotiation that's going back and forth between Raytheon and Rafael.
Oh, okay.
And at a level below that, I'm not, I don't have that level of detail, but I'll get the answer.
That would be good to know. You have a lot of members of Congress who care about that. So the Rafael-Raytheon negotiations on share lines are continuing.
Right, and then it'd be premature if I knew it to talk about how that's flowed down to companies below Raytheon.
Okay, but that's still going on.
Yes.
Can I try one more on the SBIRS?
Sure.
It cost like $10 billion over budget. It was like 7 or 8 years over budget, delayed. The public needs to have some sense that how this thing is being used for missile defense. Can you talk a little bit about it, given its track record of dollars spent and the delays?
It obviously is a factor and helps with missile defense. Okay, but I'd like to leave it at an overhead persistent assets as opposed to targeting a specific platform.
I understand that. Did it help in the successful June test? Was that part of the?
I can't go into that. It's right up against classification level. I'd rather not.
But it's an active player in the MDA architecture.
It
Is that
is.
accurate?
That's correct. You can say that.
Consistently or just for testing?
Again, I don't want to go into the warfighter aspect of this on how we operate the system. But it's safe to say it did help, and we've been public about this in terms of how that test went off. Any other questions?
Well, I got nobody else. North Korea, the threat from North Korea, this KN-08 road mobile missile, it's been acknowledged by the commanders out there. There's a potential it could be operational soon. Has any of those requirements to counter that missile flowed to MDA in terms of discrimination capabilities or different architecture for monitoring North Korea?
Without talking specifics, we're constantly aware of the threat's evolution, including the KN-08. And we constantly monitor other technologies that may feed the KN-08. And suffice it to say that we have effort underway to pace and stay ahead of the threat.
Pace and stay ahead of the threat?
Pace and stay ahead of the threat.
Okay.
And I'll just leave it at that.
There's no program you can point to in the 16 budget that's somewhat tailored to that?
In a generic sense, all of the discrimination money that we've asked for and are executing helps with the KN-08, against the KN-08. The radar, in terms of tracking and discrimination, would help against that threat. And certainly the other parts of the kill chain for Homeland Defense.
It did say in the materials that there was, quote, additional funding set aside for key capabilities to meet the maturing threat from North Korea. Can you say how much additional funding over what was already, set aside in 15?
I think it would get to the discrimination funding that we've asked for to follow on to Tony's question in terms of us working towards a mid-range discrimination capability by 2020, and certainly that funding that we've asked for last year and are continuing this year go to the heart of that comment.
Okay, and then it looked as though in the chart that was provided to us that space-based X-band or sea-based X-band is getting a new lease on life indefinitely. What's the plan for that radar?
It continues to act and deploy as a contingency capability for the warfighter on an as-needed basis, and continues to be in a limited test and support role, and the funding that we've asked, I think, has been consistent with that role. And
you foresee that? It looked like on the funding line it's going to go through the FIDA.
Certainly that'll be the decision of the warfighter, but until we have another radar deployed in Alaska, it'll continue to serve that function.
And when is LRDR supposed to be deployed?
2020. I know the SBX budget request lines up with that.
What's your intercept test scheduled for this year for the GBA? We had one in June. What's the next one roughly?
It'll be later this year.
Later this year?
Yep.
Why so long interval?
The test is going to be a non-intercept test, and it was being paced by the design, development, and qualification of the alternate divert thrusters, which I talked to you about last year. That is finishing up qualification in the next few months, and we're ordering the ship set that will go on the interceptor later this year to test that out, and it's going to be a non-intercept flight, so we'll fly it through the whole range of motion with a complex target to adequately test it before we decide to field it.
When would you have a next intercept test, though?
It'll be next year, 2016.
Well, how do you answer critics saying you're doing this once every year and a half or 2 years? Why should we feel this is a reliable system?
We're testing roughly on 9 to 12-month centers, and I'm doing it to inform fielding capability. Okay, so the next capability that I would like to field would be properly designed alternate divert thrusters to solve the vibration problem. Okay? The next test needs to inform and test the CE2 Block 1 capability, which will complete the 44 interceptors.
I see.
So the way I've structured the test program is to fly before you buy, and each test has a purpose. And there is development that needs to go on, so you can't just rush to a test that in our constrained resources and everything else that we're constrained by. I think it's important to have structured the program on this pace to inform fielding before with a successful intercept test.
To meet that 44 requirement by the end of fiscal 17.
That's correct.
I mean, this is probably a remedial question, but the
Sure.
alternate DACs, can you fill me in on, is that associated only with CE2?
So it's alternate divert thrusters,
Oh, okay.
and it will go back to the CE2 fleet, and what it does is adds a level of assurance to the already isolated IMUs, which will be fielded, and it's a double safety layer.
So that only impacts the CE2s.
And then those thrusters will also then flow to the new RKV. So it's important for the current fielding, Amy, and the future as well.
Gotcha.
So we've got to get that right.
The additional 14, though, those would be the CE2s, the latest model of the CE2, right? Not the redesigned one that you're hoping for later this decade.
Everything that is under contract today makes up the 44 by 17. I don't have to put another interceptor under contract to get to 44. What we're talking about is the future procurement with the new kill vehicle and the new thrusters to make up spares and continued flight testing and everything beyond 44. So.
Do you have a FIDF number associated with the RKV? I know there were different pieces in the chart that we were provided, but do you have a top line where we can say it's an X $100 million program or whatever?
Do. $658 million. Correct.
And then what about for the CKV, which is a separate but I suppose equal program?
Roughly, it's about $47 million a year. And the other thing that I think you saw in the budget overview was that we're really striving to focus that more towards what's after RKV, meaning back to maturing some of the technology and architectures on MOKV.
So the line item that we saw for multiple object kill vehicle and common kill vehicle will contribute to the same eventual
correct.
system? Okay.
Yeah. And the other big important development that I don't know if you picked up on was the two-stage booster development as well. And that'll be starting. That's very important for the warfighter and for us. So lots of improvements and activity in GMD.
Sorry, I missed the vote on the two-stage booster. What was
The two-stage, the GBI is a three-stage booster today. We want to be able to fly it as a two-stage, and adds battle space and time for the warfighter.
Do we have any last questions?
I want to ask you a broader one, a national intelligence estimate update on the ballistic missile defense. Late 90s, it was that North Korea and Iran may have a missile this year. That was 1998. What are you working off of in terms of NIEs? Is there a more current one than that, or is there one in the works that they're finishing up to present to you?
We're still working off the Iran May flight test and ICBM in 2015.
The 1990, late 90s NIE.
And I would defer to DIA on anything beyond that.
Does it strike you somewhat odd that they haven't updated an NIE on missile threats in that long a time?
I think they maybe have not updated the entire one, but they continually update and provide assessments that help us in terms of how we inform our development.
Okay, you're working off of that 2015 that this was again a projection a long time ago, that they may have something by this year, and that's your working hypothesis?
But there's a much more active dialogue that goes on with the intelligence community, okay, in terms of what are they seeing, what are the developments, and then that flows back to us, okay, what do we need to do? It's not that I'm mired back in 1999. It's a continual dialogue on the recent development, okay? Yeah. Anything else? All right, thanks, everybody. Great to see you.